It is for me a pleasure to invite Her Excellency Dr. Len Ishmael, Director General, OECS Commission, to give special remarks. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, my colleague, commissioners, ladies and gentlemen, the OECS, and old friends, some of whom are here. It is really a pleasure and an honor for me to be here with you this morning. And whilst I do know that we are here principally to discuss the Revised Treaty of Basseterre and its various elements, I think perhaps I would like to, in my remarks at this moment, to speak a little bit about the historical context of the journey of the OECS, which brings us here today. I do not have prepared remarks to share with you, but this will be by way of conversation. I think it's really very important for us just to be mindful of the fact that we are 9 member states, we are micro-states, 600,000 people or less. We range in population size from 5,000 people to about 168,000 people. Most of the islands of the OECS, for the last census, results of which is slowly coming in, we see a population very much in the decline. Formerly, it was only 1 or 2 member states in the OECS which were losing populations. But increasingly, as our populations become much more and better educated, our younger people are leaving and going overseas to seek tertiary education, which is a very good thing for us. But it means that they go away, they get married, and in their fertile years, they're bearing children other places. And so you find that even though we have immigration coming in, over time, our numbers are not increasing, which is why I'm saying 600,000 people or less. It means, therefore, that one of the characteristics of all of our islands is that of our small size. Our vulnerabilities, therefore, are very well known. Our domestic markets are small, the cost of capital is small, the cost of capital is high, the technology, the rate at which we can absorb technology is very limited. The labor force is also small. We have all of the challenges of small size. This history which we live in today really has its roots as far back as 1692 and 1695, when the common administration of the Leeward and Windward Islands was a fact of convenience. At one point, in fact, the administrative center of this administrative grouping was the capital in Nevis, and not even just St. Kitts. We have evolved over time, and if we were to skip a couple of centuries and find ourselves somewhere around 1969, 68, the early 70s, the countries made a decision to pull themselves together in an administrative grouping of their own as they all sought to go on a path and a journey which would lead them to independence. They formed WISA, which was the group of Windward Islands ministers, and their purpose was singular. It was to provide support to each other to move towards self-rule and then independence. And then, of course, by the late 70s and early 1980s, most of the countries that chose the path of independence were independent. And so the seeds of the OECS that we are aware of have their roots in a common history, shared institutions, traditions, mores, family ties. We are married to each other. We have been one people for a very, very long time. The OECS Economic Union serves to formalize something which has been in the making for a very, very long time. I think it's also important to say that in 1981, the Treaty of Basseterre established the OECS as an organization. For the very first time, that step was deliberate on the part of the member states. For the first time, those who were independent found themselves responsible for all of their affairs, very, very much aware of their own vulnerabilities and their small size on the world stage. They found it important to pull themselves together by way of a formal treaty known as the not the Revised Treaty, the Treaty of Basseterre, signed on June 18th, 1981. And at the very core of that treaty is functional cooperation. They agreed to pull themselves together, to work together in common on an array of 23 different areas, including fiscal and monetary issues, issues pertaining to immigration, security, tourism, trade, agriculture, everything that you could think of that was development. One of the things that they also did was to agree to joint diplomatic missions in different parts of the world. And the beauty of the OECS model lies in the fact that it seeks to build resilience and decrease vulnerabilities of the group by an institutional architecture that allows them to pool their resources, human and financial, to allow them to provide services to each other in common. And so we have the currency union, which you're very well much aware of, the single Supreme Court, ECTEL that broke the back of cable and wireless and allowed all of us now to have a cell phone, whether it's digital or Lime. But all of these institutions of the OECS have brought real benefit, tangible benefit to us as OECS people. The very first OECS joint diplomatic mission was established in 1986. And just for comparison, I want us all to remember that the Treaty of Lisbon of early last year, for the first time, allows the European Union to experiment with the notion of joint diplomatic missions, something that we have been doing for a very, very long time. The OECS single currency, for example, is close to about 40 years old. The euro is 12, 13 years old and experiencing real struggle and tension right now. We're all aware of those things. So as OECS citizens, I think it's really very, very important that we always are mindful of how far we've come. This whole move and this journey, which has allowed the OECS to be trailblazing in more ways than one, has more often than not meant that we have had several dates with history. In or around 2008, several things happened at about the same time. One, it was very clear that we, all of us now, particularly those of us in the former South, are very much aware that there's a new international economic order in the making. The countries which were formerly in the South are no longer in the South. They're front and center on the international stage and demanding a say in the corridors of international power commensurate with their increasing economic might in the world. You take a look at what's happening with China, India, take a look at Brazil. All of these countries are now playing an increasingly important role on the international stage. At the same time that the traditional partners of us in the OECS are playing less and less of vital economic role to our growth and development. So that 30 years ago, for example, when we still received developmental support and finance from the US, as of the early 1980s, when the Eastern European group of countries started to move from east to west in terms of their ideology, the US moved the headquarters for the Caribbean from Jamaica to Eastern Europe, and all of the development funds that we used to receive from USAID went in the early 1980s. The preferential access we had to markets through the UK, for example, as a result of trade liberalization and globalization, we lost those markets as well. We don't have a single scholarship from the United States of America, for example, but we have 500 and 600 annually from Cuba. We have scholarships from Malaysia, from Singapore, from China, from Taiwan, from Japan, from Indonesia, from Brazil, from Argentina, from Austria. There are many, many other players. So we were conscious of two things happening in the mid-1980s, or just past the mid-1980s. One, the emergence of new global blocs who were aligning themselves in networks of power and influence, and it was for the OECS to strategically locate itself within those alliances so that when those bigger countries with more power were invited to tables at which we never have a seat, at least those who are our allies would advocate and champion for us. And this is happening. For the very first time, therefore, in 2008, at the level of the OECS, at the regional level, we started a process of not moving away from CARICOM, because we are fundamentally and will always be part of CARICOM, but understanding that the need to champion and advocate our strategic interests is our job. And the strategic intelligence that's required to be able to do this and promote ourselves anywhere in the world that that voice and message needs to be taken is our responsibility. It has never been and will never be CARICOM's. And we started that process of outreach in different parts of the world. And for the very first time, in January 2009, the world community decided that it was important, because we were experimenting with our own brand of integration, to validate that presence internationally under the name of the OECS, as opposed to the OECS through CARICOM. And for the first time in January 2009, we started to receive third parties accrediting ambassadors to the OECS, starting in January 2009 with Spain, and following in quick succession with Brazil, Mexico, Finland, Austria, Germany, France, the United States of America, Cuba, and there's a long list of others who are also interested. With those new development partners has come an array of development support for the work of the OECS, because we have captured the imagination and the confidence of so many around the world. So that 8-9 years ago, we were attracting maybe $5 million of development finance at a regional level. By April of this year, from January to April of this year, we had already gotten commitments of $120 million. Last year was 59. The year before that was 53. The year before that was 45 million. The year before that was 35. We're doing great things at the regional level. At the same time that the economic turbulence was taking place, starting in the summer of 2008, OECS heads of government were bold and visionary, and took that bold leap forward and said we must deepen our integration. In turbulent times, we need to hang together even much more. Turbulent times requires strength and unity. And even though CARICOM member states, the larger countries, did quite the opposite. They stepped away from CARICOM and became a bit more nationalistic in their view. The OECS microstates said, we need to be together even much more, because times are bad and we can only survive if we come together in a closer unit. And so they moved very, very quickly on plans for the OECS Economic Union, accelerating all of those plans, so that by January 2011, we were in a position to ratify a brand new treaty, the Revised Treaty of Basseterre, establishing the OECS Economic Union. At the very heart of that treaty are the people of the OECS, because it's important to provide that single space that allows for a single space for consumption and production, so that the domestic markets themselves are enlarged. And that's the beauty of the OECS Economic Union, is that it provides the opportunity for the very first time for pan-OECS businesses, and it's one of the things that we really, really must work on. And then the rest is history. Of course, very, very quickly we were able to move. By August 1st last year, on the Emancipation Day, which most of us celebrate on August 1st, we emancipated OECS citizens, freedom of movement, so that all OECS citizens have the right to move freely across that single space and exercise their rights of indefinite stay, to look for work, to stay and take up work, to bring their kids, to send them to school, to buy land, and all of those sorts of things, and to be treated as nationals within the boundaries of that new national space, within the boundaries of that new single space, not national space, because the boundaries over time will increasingly be removed. And that is trailblazing. We were able as well, therefore, 1 year later, August 10th, for the very first time, to create another date with history on August 10th, when we created the OECS People's Assembly the OECS Assembly, which shows real political maturity on the part of both the opposition and government sides across our region, because they are led into the OECS Assembly not as one side and the other side, but as national delegates coming together in a regional forum to speak and debate and deliberate on issues of significance at the national and regional levels. Importantly, both groups have agreed to put the OECS regional agenda in a politically neutral zone. I mean, this is just remarkable, that in the OECS we're able to do what the wider Caribbean community grouping has been unable to do, and we're doing it in really, really very short and swift time. It is for us as OECS citizens, of course. I'm a little bit removed from it until one day I take my seat as an OECS citizen again, to hold our Assembly accountable to those things that are important to all of us as OECS citizens. We at the Secretariat, with our colleagues in the Commission, are working very quickly to ensuring that that first business of the OECS Assembly, that first sitting of the Assembly, as opposed to the inauguration of last week Friday, will take place very, very quickly. So there we are. I mean, and what an incredible week it has been for us last week. The OECS received a gold medal from a young 19-year-old in Grenada. I am told that just a couple of days ago here in St. Kitts and Nevis, the OECS won the golfing tournament. We've come of age, colleagues. We all must be proud. But the work really now begins, because we can no longer think as Kittitians, as St. Lucians, as Dominicans, that it is us at the national level and them at the regional level. It's all of us. It's many islands, one sea, one space, one people. Now we must live it, and I thank you.